This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, and wealthy and get better every single day. We're definitely be talking about some wealth today because we have an expert in that industry, and he's got a great looking shirt on today, if I may say. I didn't get a chance to tell him, but I like that. It looks good.
Thank you.
Chad Willardson is the founder and president of Pacific Capital, a fiduciary wealth advisory firm serving high net worth entrepreneurs and families. As one of the top wealth management experts in the country, he is particularly passionate about educating children on financial literacy. And brother, no question about it, children's financial literacy, that's not taught a lot in school. I'm excited to hear about that. But welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Coming off a pretty cool event last night. I'll tell you about it real quick. I was at a CNBC event for a few pro athletes, pro sports team owners, and some of the media. CNBC and Nike and a couple other firms were there. It was awesome. Got to meet Kevin Durant, got to meet the owner of the Rams, and a couple of really sharp people, and talk about the intersection of business and sports, which is kind of a fun topic because I'm a big sports fanatic. So.
As am I. So legitimately, you got to meet. I mean, he'll be, I don't know, top 20 for sure, players of all time. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
Were you there just in a networking capacity, or were you there to talk about financial literacy? Because one of the things I know about professional athletes I've personally worked with, those that I grew up with, and those that I've known, man, often somebody like a Kevin comes in, maybe doesn't have that literacy, and gosh, we've seen some of those tragic stories. So was that the capacity, or were you just there to shake some hands?
You know, I was invited because of a contact at CNBC. I'd done some interviews with them on wealth and entrepreneurship and financial literacy. And so that's why I was invited. I was not on the panel. The panel was billionaires and up, and then a couple Kevin Durant type people. So I didn't quite make it to that panel, but it was a small room. So it was a cool event, good opportunity to meet some people and talk about some opportunities, and I learned a lot. So it was awesome.
What was your journey into this world of financial services, fiduciary? Where's the passion for that for you? Because as I mentioned earlier, financial literacy is not commonplace, certainly in the American educational system. It's not part of the curriculum. What led you to this path? I've
always liked numbers and money, and I did not know what I wanted to be when I grew up, per se. Like, I'm more of a sports guy than a jobs guy. I didn't really know as much about stocks or investing as a kid. But when I was in college, I got an internship at an investment company, and I worked side by side with the portfolio manager, who was basically in charge of the company, and they had $10 billion under management, picking stocks for their fund, interviewing founders and owners, and talking about what to make investments in. And I got to be just the right-hand guy, the analyst junkie, doing all the dirty work as a college student. And it was fascinating to me. And I love working with people and talking about goals. I'm an obsessive goal setter. And so goals, people, money, like, it was natural that this was a path that I found. Luckily, I got recruited to Merrill Lynch straight out of college in Southern California. And I was there for almost 9 years. And then after the Great Recession, I left and started Pacific Capital, independent fiduciary, strictly serving entrepreneurs. We've evolved and grown to where now we're serving entrepreneurs with at least $10 million to invest with us. So it is kind of a smaller niche group, but I've been doing this. This is all I've ever done. So 21, 22 years now. And I didn't see myself doing this, but it just kind of naturally worked out, and can't see myself doing anything else.
That's an amazing world that you're in. Now, you've mentioned sports a couple times. Is that your background? Did you grow up an athlete and play in various sports? I know you mentioned college. Is that something that you followed through all the way through college?
I did not regrettably, but I'm a big sports. I'm an athlete. I still am. I still call myself an athlete. I play sports a lot. I own a sports facility, and I started a couple sports clubs, basketball and volleyball, the travel sports scene, and we own a big sports facility in California. My daughter is a D1 basketball player, and she's playing in the Big 12, which is pretty cool. She's a freshman. And my boys, I've got 5 kids, so she's the oldest. My two older boys are both 6'5", and they're 13 and 16 years old, probably tracking for 6'9" and 6'7". And so I think we've got a couple more Division I athletes in the stable, if you will. So we're just big sports fans. I got season tickets to all the Southern California sports. So that's kind of the connection. I represent a couple clients, but I don't have a ton of pro athlete clients, but I do have a couple.
Yeah. Well, congrats to your daughter making D1 and the boys already. You said 6'5" and 6'3" already. My goodness.
Yeah. Both 6'5", both 6'5".
That?
It's crazy.
Wow. That's amazing, brother.
Yeah.
Why the high net worth? What really attracted you to that world? Obviously, as you get into the financial service world, there's middle America, you have your top 1%, but you even ramped it up, a little bit more to that 10 million plus. Why that sector? What's the attraction there?
Good question. And just to be clear, like, I help all kinds of people as a friend. It's just not in our business model to serve everyone out there. I think it's become more commoditized to be a quote unquote financial planner for the masses. And I think it's really hard to differentiate yourself. I also don't think there's as many ways to be valuable to the 27-year-old starting a family, just got out of college. I don't think a lot of the costs are necessarily justified. And so we're extremely valuable serving as a family office to these entrepreneurs because we're digging into their business. We're working directly with their CFO. We're guiding a lot of their tax planning. Our concierge team is planning their family travel. We're doing a lot of experience-based interactions with our clients. And it just seems that the more complex and busy and higher growth these clients have, the more we can do for them. And so as we've grown and moved up in scale of the type of clients we served, I just felt like it was better to be a niche specialist in an area that's not crowded rather than trying to serve and be all things to all people.
Well, and you mentioned being in California, and I think Southern California, it's obviously that you have that demographic certainly that exists in a concentrated area. But one of the things you mentioned, and I love that you brought this up, you said at that middle America level, let's say, some of these costs aren't associated. Now, you're clearly more than just a wealth manager. You mentioned tax planning, you mentioned travel. I mean, I heard a real budget being set into place and how to grow that wealth. But I want to talk about the cost because I think the only negative thing that I ever hear about financial planners is that, that cost. Tell me what you meant by that, specific to a middle American and not making sense for some of the costs at that level.
I think that, don't get me wrong, I think most people do need a financial coach. I just think that there are plenty of simple cases. I've had a lot of people from LinkedIn want to hire me. And if they if they're a friend of a friend, then maybe I take a look at their stuff and I'll give them a couple pieces of advice and tell them not to hire somebody and pay ongoing fees because you don't have a complex enough case to justify that. And so oftentimes people just need guidance in getting things set up properly, but the ongoing maintenance maybe is a lot simpler than they think. That's not to say that there's not a lot of great financial advisors out there for the middle America type of family. There are. I think it's important to find a fiduciary that's independent, that doesn't work for commissions, doesn't get paid differently based on what you invest in. I think that's critical. And doesn't have the conflicts of interest that most quote unquote financial advisors have when they work for a big bank or a big insurance company. There are a lot of, it's nothing against the people. They're very well-intentioned financial professionals, but they're just in the system. So they're incentivized to do things that may not always be the best thing for you. That's just the way that it is. So 90 to 95% of financial advisors are actually brokers, agents. They're not fiduciaries, and they're not independent. So you just have to know the territory you're in, know the sandbox you're playing in before you make financial decisions.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you guys take a real holistic approach when you mentioned, yeah. So talk about that, because I think so often I've met folks, because I came from the financial service world for years, and it doesn't matter how much money somebody necessarily makes. That doesn't equate to financial literacy. And that's something that I think is so fascinating, is that oftentimes people could be great at business, but they suck at managing their money. They really don't have a plan. And I like what you said early with, again, the tax planning, and you even said travel plans, which that's a new one. That's cool. Talk about that holistic plan, what that looks like, and what somebody should be looking for, whether they're at that 10 million mark, or even if they're at 5 million. What should they really be looking for?
I think all successful investing is goal focused and planning driven, and all failed investing is market outlook focused and reactionary, and it's responding to the headlines and the scary news, and this is what my brother thinks I should do with my money. And I think the important part of what we do is the reason we go after these higher net worth clients is because we take so much time digging into what they want and need before we start giving advice, that it would make no sense for us to do all that and get paid pennies. Like, we can't afford it, because we're investing so much in the resources up front of making everything about what the client's family wants. So when we deliver, it's very worthwhile. So no matter if you have 100,000, 5 million, or 20 million, number one, you need to work with someone you like and trust. That's pretty obvious. But besides someone you like and trust, they need to have experience working with people like you. I think that they should be in a position that you want to be in. Like, I think I have 5 kids. I'm not going to take parenting advice from someone who's never had kids. I'm not going to go to a gym and hire a personal trainer that doesn't work out and eats McDonald's every day. Right. So why would you if you're an entrepreneur, why would you take financial advice and business advice from someone who's an employee of a big bank? I don't get that. So to me, there's a Jack for every Jill. There's a financial professional for every client out there, but you should definitely be working with someone that gets you, that works with people like you, that has actually demonstrated some success on their own. So for me, like, I don't work with executives. I don't relate to them as much. I think there are a lot of great corporate financial advisors that understand the corporate planning of executives. Like, that makes sense. I work with entrepreneurs. That's who I get. Kind of one of those weirdo entrepreneurs that starts new businesses and invests in real estate and private equity and hedge funds and does a lot of travel and works remotely. Like, those are the people I get. So those are the people that instantly we connect. And I think that matters. So besides competency, connection, and having them understand where you're coming from and where you're trying to go, I think that matters a lot.
Yeah. And one of the ways to do this as you vet someone out is to just ask, because you're talking about working with somebody you like and trust. You didn't say what their pedigree, what school they went to, but rather you're saying, look, do you understand my goals, where I want to go?
Right.
The fact that you have 5 kids, like, okay, that's somebody that can relate to that versus, I don't know, somebody that's going to be single the rest of their life and they want to do it differently. So asking these questions just on a personal basis, almost like we're doing right now, sounds so much better than, like you said, my brother said I should go see Todd over here because, you know, Todd has an airplane. Well, so what? Maybe that's not important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think looking at the days of the long PowerPoint presentation to me, it doesn't make sense. Like our presentation, if you will, is really about what our core client needs and what they value and what's important to them and the issues that we solve. It's not like our team has 174 combined years of experience and we manage money in this many countries and da, 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 da. Like, I think that's, to me, I just don't relate to that whole corporate stuff where it's all about the financial team. I think you need to look for financial professionals who are all about you. Like they listen more, they ask really high quality questions. They can demonstrate confidence and competence in the areas that you need help in. And I think that's sometimes rare. I think you can actually find that people are book smart, but they have no experience in real wealth management.
So it sounds like when your presentation, I'm using air quotes for those that are not watching me on video, it's more of asking questions like,
yes,
where are you wanting to go, Chad? What are you looking to accomplish? Do you have a time that you want to retire by? I mean, you're asking just questions about really what their lifestyle goal should look like before you're even diving into anything that we're going to do, managing your money, strategies, portfolios, anything like that.
Yes, I think the goals need to drive the portfolio decisions. A lot of people get shoved into a box and they're buying mutual funds or stocks or bonds based on just what the flavor of the day is at the company. But I think that you should really understand what your money should do, what you want your money to do for you and your lifestyle before you make any financial decisions. So the portfolio is run by the goals, not the other way around.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was taking the emotions out of it, really as a planner, not having like you're managing the money, but it's not the personal thing. And my point to this is every financial decision I've ever made that was a mistake was an emotional one.
Yeah.
It wasn't a logical, like you mentioned the recession. And when we're going down, it's like, people were emotional and they weren't making great financial sound decisions. And maybe there's not a question, but maybe just you can touch on how it's so effective having a coach, having somebody there that they care about your money, but they have a plan and they're not just going to shift because, oh, the market went down a few percentage points. We're not pulling the emotional lever as I would with my own personal money.
Yeah, one thing I repeat to clients often is my mission is not to insulate you from volatility in the short run. My mission is to protect you from long-term regrets. And so there's going to be moments where your commitment level is tested. It's supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be bumpy and rocky. Otherwise, we're not going to get the 8 to 12% a year returns over the 20-year period if we're not willing to ride the roller coaster. So there's going to be times when you want to get off the roller coaster. And I'm going to say, wait till the ride stops. Like, don't jump off in the middle and take your seatbelt off. Let's hang through this. Hey, remember the plan we set up and why we set it up. Hey, remember we built in some liquidity. So if you have emergencies, you can take cash out or you can borrow against this. We already planned for the what ifs, but we're going to go through this and we're going to make smart financial decisions when everyone else is panicking. I had 2007, 2008, I had some clients that were traveling in Europe together and the world was collapsing. And I remember they called me and they had me on speakerphone in a hotel lobby and there were two couples and they're both clients. And they were like, we can't watch our accounts go down any longer. You know, we need to do something. We've got to sell and just wait till the storm passes. And I said, you know, that's exactly what everyone else is doing. I said, let me tell you what we're doing today. We're putting more money to work and we're buying more stocks. And there was a moment of silence there where I felt like they put it on mute and were probably swearing about me, you know, but those investments we made that month did better than anything else I've ever done for them because it was a moment of panic and crisis and the markets were down so much. And a year and a half, 2 years later, we looked back and it was like, holy cow, we tripled our money in those investments we made when you were calling me from Germany. And it's like, that's what I'm here for, to make hard, disciplined decisions in the trenches when you feel like you want to panic or curl up in a ball under your desk. You know, that's why you need a steady, experienced team that's confident and has a game plan. unfortunately, a lot of my industry is in the same panicked position that clients are a lot of times. So we're not completely immune to the emotions and the roller coaster. But I think if you can find an advisor who has demonstrated confidence and courage in those moments and can prove it to you, I think those are the kinds of people you want to align yourself with.
One of the things I love, and one of my best friends is a wealth manager as well. So I have these conversations frequently with John, as his name. And one of the things that John and I have talked about, the real estate market and the financial market, if you look at it historically, it just continues to rise.
Yeah.
It's not falling off the cliff. Now, does that mean it won't have a dip? It won't, of course, but being able to manage those emotions, to sit back and say, all right, in this small moment, it is down. And that sucks, man, if I'm looking at it. But kind of the set it and forget it to a degree, especially when you have a planner, it's almost best, because you're acting like a psychologist trying to talk them off the ledge, when the truth is, you're like, look, man, we told you this was coming.
Yeah.
You just got to let us do our thing. I don't know if it's a question as much as just kind of a comment that I have observed through many years. If I could talk to my 20-year-old self, my 25-year-old self, my 35-year-old self, JM, the market's going to continue to go up. Just be patient. One of the things that you talk about, and you mentioned 5 kids a couple of times. Why isn't there more financial literacy, Chad? What is the resistance, or people aren't taking enough responsibility, or maybe that's not where it should be in the school system? What are your thoughts on that, brother? Because I'm also a parent of 2 kids. I teach them this stuff, but I don't think they're getting it very much in high school or even college, for that matter.
I've thought about it a lot. I've spoken at big school district events, and the kids love it, because when I start off the presentation, I have a big red letter F with a circle around it. And I said, the F is the score I'm giving all of your teachers and your principals, because they haven't taught you guys about money. And the crowd cheers. And I usually get a couple side eye looks from the administrators, but I think that either they don't know a lot about it themselves, or they just don't want to touch it. But I frankly think they're probably not the right people to teach it. I don't think that they have that experience, and they're great at teaching the subjects they teach, I'm sure, but that's just not, it's never been a priority for schools. And I don't think relying on the government to learn about personal financial success is a good idea anyways. So I've taken it upon myself to get involved in this mission. I wrote my second book, as you can see behind me, is called Smart Not Spoiled. And it's the 7 money skills kids must master before leaving the nest. I started a podcast. It's called the Smart Money Parenting Show. We climbed the ranks in the family and parenting category on Apple, all the way hit the number 2 spot a few months ago. And then I co-founded a company called Gravy Stack, which is the first financial game that's a bank, but it plays like a game for kids. It's got missions and levels. It's using gaming to engage kids in learning about financial literacy and taking away that annoying thing of kids asking mom and dad for money or allowance. So Gravy Stack, we just launched on the App Store this month. We've got 30 to 40 employees. We've been working on it for 2 years. We've probably spent $10 to $11 million invested in this to make it something that we believe is going to really change the way kids learn about entrepreneurship and life skills and money. And so something I'm very passionate about, obviously.
Yeah, I love that. Smart, not spoiled. If you guys didn't catch that, so many people listening are parents. And you mentioned, Chad, 7 of the lessons before they leave the nest.
Yeah.
What, if you don't mind going through at least a few of those that we could maybe chat about?
Yeah. So the 7 chapters, each of them is a topic that I felt was one of the top 7 principles or topics to teach kids before they graduate high school. So I'll just zip through them. And then if you want to talk about one of them, let me know. So number 1 is invest early and often. Number 2 is borrow wisely. Number 3 is know your cash flow. 4, talking taxes. 5, learn to earn. 6, protect who and what you care about. And 7, give generously.
I love, well, I like them all, of course, but I love number 7. Give generously. Every time you give, it will come back tenfold. And that's not the purpose of it, but it's just the way the world works. You mentioned the gamification earlier with Gravy Stack, which that's awesome. But one of the things I've done with my younger boy who has an entrepreneurial mind, he's constantly starting businesses, washing trash. He's 13 now.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
And he has a goal. I'm going to say it out loud for him. He said, Dad, before I graduate high school, I'll make $1 million in a year. And I'm like, dang, cool, dude. Awesome. I'm all for it. But one of the things that we started a couple of years ago, and this will lead to another part of the question, he really said, Dad, I want to get into crypto. And I said, all right, look, we're going to take a little sliver here. And the best part, I don't care what happened with money. That wasn't the point. The point was the moment it went up, he's like, Dad, we got to sell. The moment it went down, Dad, we got to get out. And I'm like, look, we're going to relax and we're just going to go through it. And it was such a cool thing to watch at the time, this 11-year-old go through these emotions. Speaking of crypto, your thoughts, stance, anything that you're involved in, or maybe it's not hocus pocus, because that's not the right thing to say, but it's one of those things that people just don't know. I know some people have done extremely well in it, but others have really kind of lost their shorts. So any thoughts that you have on it, Chad?
I admittedly am not an expert. I know more than most people, but I can't say I'm an expert in the crypto world. I have a 6-figure portfolio in crypto investments, but I don't claim to know as much as some people. I've got a friend who had a very close personal friend. He had 180 million of his own money in crypto. And we were talking about it a lot last year. And I persuaded him to sell almost all of it at the time, just because I felt like he was obviously over concentrated in one particular investment category. And thankfully he did right before it went down a lot. Probably saved him 9 figures of that decline. And he knows way more about this area than I do. I think it's early to tell. It's too early to tell for me. I think there are some parts of the unregulated areas that concern me, where you just don't know how it's going to shake out. You have governments and big banks now getting involved, and I feel like they're going to take away some of the benefits that people were excited about, the decentralization of it. So I don't know. I think in the next 5 years, though, it's going to be determined whether it's something that sticks or doesn't, just because I think the regulators are definitely trying to get involved right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating. The particular app we went in on this small, we're not talking anywhere near the numbers of your portfolio, or certainly not the 180 million, but the small portfolio that my son and I did in an app called Voyager. Well, what do you know? Voyager ends up declaring BK. And 33% of 100 is basically what you got back. Tough luck. That's what the settlement was. And that's not to say that couldn't happen with a bank, I suppose. Yeah. But it was a stark reminder to my son to be like, look, man, this is still this brave new world. And so that's fascinating. You have a topic here I want to ask on, because it says why it's time to retire hustle culture. Now, I'm curious what this is, because you already mentioned you have several different businesses. I think at least 3 books I see there. Gravy Stack, your wealth management. So to me, you're definitely putting in the hustle, but maybe I'm equating hustle and hustle culture a little differently. So tell me what you mean by that.
Yeah, that was an article I wrote for Entrepreneur Magazine called basically Why the Hustle Culture is a Big Lie. And I think it stems from me. I love motivational stuff. I always listen to like YouTube motivational stuff when I'm working out, and I'll hear them talking about how you got to be willing to give up sleep, and you got to get up at 3 a.m, and you got to, someone's out there grinding while you're doing this or that. And I just don't buy any of it at all. Like I'm a hard worker, and I believe in hard work and discipline and patience. So I think there's two extremes. There's one extreme that is the Instagram, TikTok world, where people think they're entitled, and they think, well, I should just have success instantly and I deserve it and I don't have to work for it. That's the one extreme. The other extreme is like sacrifice your health, your family, your relationships, because if you're not working and grinding 24/7, then you're never going to make it. So I disagree with both sides. And what I've tried to do is create an incredible process and team and system to where I could be an owner, but not an operator. So and I'm also an elected official, by the way. I manage $650 million for taxpayers as a volunteer position because I donate the salary. So I get voted every 4 years on the presidential ballot. That's another thing that could take a ton of time, but I'm very intentional about what I do. So I probably say no to most opportunities, and then I have a team that handles most of the operational stuff day to day. So I'm only contributing a very small amount of time, but I believe the highest impact of what I can contribute. So the hustle culture says work like a dog or you're never going to make it. And I believe that you better take care of yourself and put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can do anything else successful. So I'm very involved as a dad. I've been married 22 years. I go to every single game that my kids have, no matter where it is in the country. Like I'm flying in 2 hours, I'm flying to Vegas with my son for his basketball tournament, and I'll be there for 4 days working remotely, going to his games. So like, I don't miss important family stuff for work ever. So we'll reschedule anything work related to accommodate what's going on with my family. So I think the hustle culture promotes a lot of selfishness and burnout. And that's the point of that article. And so I'm definitely not a fan of that. I think you can work really hard and be more efficient with your time while still actually having a life. Pacific Capital here, we close at 3 o'clock every day. We're 8 to 3. Show me another wealth manager managing $1 billion that closes at 3 o'clock Monday through Friday. Like it doesn't happen out there. But I believe that people are more committed and focused when they have a life outside of work.
Yeah, that's well said, brother. And I agree. The whole idea of, look, you have to get up at 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever club they come up with. That can work for some, but it doesn't. That's not a guaranteed blueprint. I love what you said. Your family time comes before work every single time. That was really interesting. You don't hear that often. And the 8 to 3, that is absolutely fascinating. I have to imagine that aligns with the company values of Pacific Capital, that you're very intentional about. These are the values that we have, because you're right. 8 to 3 in that world, I've actually never heard of it. That's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. And people think clients are going to be upset or we're not serving enough, but I just analyzed the call logs, and it was 92% of our calls, incoming calls, were between 8 and 3. And so I said, for a month, we're going to try this and see if our productivity stays high. And I believe our productivity was higher, and people were coming in with more energy. And if they want to stay after and study or do some extra project or something, they can, but it's absolutely not required. And oftentimes at 3 o'clock, the lights are off and they're coaching their kid's sports team, or they're going to the beach or going to the gym or doing something else. And that's fine, because I want them to come in with full energy and focus. They're not scrolling at social media here at work. They're working hard because they know they're still going to have time after work is done.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You don't hear it often, but I am a huge believer in this. You guys know, on my website, work-life balance, people laugh at this all the time. That's not true. You can't do it. Yes, you can. Mm-hmm. It's all comes down to your mindset. Speaking of mindset, brother, you mentioned setting up systems. You mentioned being an owner, not necessarily an operator. Right. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because this is one of the things I find entrepreneurs, in the beginning anyway, really struggle with, because if they don't do everything, it's not going to get done well. And clearly that philosophy is so different for you.
Yeah. I think the greatest book that changed my mindset on that was called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Who Not How is really about the people that you collaborate with, partner with, delegate to, hire, and surround yourself with to get more things done and to get them done better. So often we delegate down. We give tasks to people that are not as good as us, and we end up having to babysit the task, or we're still involved, or we're correcting them. But if you're delegating the right way, you're more like you're elevating, you're giving your task to someone who's actually better at it than you. And so I've just brought a lot of people in my life and team that are better than me at a lot of stuff. So I only do a couple things. Like I write my books, I do my LinkedIn, I do podcasts, interviews as a guest and a host, and then I'll meet with and consult with our top clients. Other than that, I pretty much don't do anything, so every little thing that's done for all the businesses is done by a person who's better at that task than I am. I have 2 assistants. One of them is very right brain, one of them is very left brain. The left brain assistant handles a lot of the business, the financial, the P&Ls, the real estate stuff, all the vendor relationships. The right brain assistant handles branding, marketing, the PR company, and personal schedules and stuff like that. So I think it's important to understand as an entrepreneur that you're good at probably 1 to 2 things, and that's it, and stop doing everything else. And so the earlier I figured that out, the more success I had.
Yeah, that's amazing. The top 3 things you wish everyone would do financially.
I think number 1, set specific financial goals. Number 2, invest consistently. I encourage people to invest weekly just to make it a habit. And then number 3 is get professional outside perspectives, just to look and double check what you're doing. There's great financial professionals for every type of person, investor out there. And I think seeking that advice, being humble about it, and then making sure that you're following through on your end of the bargain, I think that's going to lead you to the most successful outcomes.
Chad, is there anything I didn't know enough to ask you that you want to make sure to share with the audience before we wrap this up?
I don't think so. I think JM, you know a lot. You're a great interviewer. I don't think you missed anything.
Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on. I told you guys, happy, healthy, wealthy. We literally covered all of them, but he came about it such a different way. Chad, you're awesome, brother. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and just your candidness. It was awesome.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Guys, you mentioned some great books. Who Not How, Strategic Coach, Dan Sullivan, unbelievable program. He mentioned taking care of your family above your business needs as entrepreneurs. How many times do we do that? How many times do we compromise that family life? You don't want to have those regrets. Such powerful lessons. Make sure to share this with an entrepreneur, somebody in business that you're thinking of right now that needs this reminder, because it was a beautiful, beautiful reminder. Chad, I forgot to ask you if they wanted to reach out, they were in that category for Pacific Capital to maybe be a client, or they're in Southern California, some of the other things. What's the best place for them to reach you?
Yeah, so I'd say 3 spots: pacificcapital.com if you're directly interested in talking about your own financial stuff, chadwillardson.com just to see any other ways that we can work together, communicate. And then if you're active on LinkedIn, I'm there. I'm on LinkedIn every day. So
awesome. Guys, go check it out. I mean, legitimately, he was talking not only big numbers, but what a lifestyle he's leading, and he can help you as well. So until next time, you guys, remember, your mindset matters. I appreciate you all. We'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.